Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the stars. The Liberty's Edge was not the biggest ship in space, but it was his ship. He had commanded it for 3 years now, and his crew trusted him completely. They were good people, all of them. Today, however, Jake felt worried about something he could not yet name. Lieutenant Amy Carter sat at her communication station, listening to radio signals from across the galaxy. Her face grew pale as she heard the reports coming in. She turned to look at Captain Morrison with fear in her eyes. "Captain," she said in a quiet voice, "I'm getting emergency messages from everywhere. The Altarian defense fleet is gone. All of it. The Zephyrians destroyed every single ship." Jake felt his stomach drop. The Altarian fleet was one of the strongest in the galaxy. They had ships with the best weapons and shields that money could buy. If the Zephyrians had destroyed them all, then no one was safe. "How many ships did the Altarians lose?" Jake asked. "All of them, sir. Over 200 warships. The battle lasted only 4 hours. The Zephyrians didn't lose a single vessel." A bridge became very quiet. Everyone could hear Amy's words, and everyone understood what they meant. The Zephyrian Empire had been conquering worlds for 5 years now. They moved from system to system like a dark wave, destroying everything in their path. No one had been able to stop them or even slow them down. Chief Engineer Pete Rodriguez climbed up from the engine room. His clothes were dirty with grease and oil, and he looked tired. Pete was the kind of man who could fix anything, but today he looked worried too. "Captain," Pete said, "I've been reading the technical reports about the Zephyrian ships. Their technology doesn't make any sense. It's like they're using science that we don't understand." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. Pete pulled out a small computer tablet and showed it to the captain. On the screen were pictures of Zephyrian warships. They were huge, dark vessels that seemed to bend light around them. They looked wrong somehow, as if they didn't belong in normal space. "Look at this," Pete said, pointing to the screen. "Their ships are the size of small moons. Each one carries enough firepower to destroy a planet. But that's not the strange part. The strange part is how their weapons work." Jake studied the images carefully. The Zephyrian ships did look different from anything he had ever seen. They seemed to shimmer and blur, as if they were not completely solid. Their weapons fire. "Pure gravity," Pete continued. "They can make black holes appear wherever they want. Their shields exist in multiple dimensions at the same time. When our ships fire at them, the energy just passes through their hulls like they're not even there." Navigator Susan Wells looked up from her station. She was a young woman with bright eyes and a quick mind. Susan could plot a course through hyperspace faster than anyone Jake had ever met. "Captain," Susan said, "I've been tracking the Zephyrian advance. They're moving toward the core systems now. At their current speed, they'll reach human space in less than 2 months." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Human space included. Dozens of colonies and billions of people. Earth itself was only 3 hyperspace jumps from the outer defense line. If the Zephyrians broke through, humanity would be wiped out just like all the other species they had conquered. "What about the Galactic Coalition?" Jake asked. "Are they sending reinforcements?" Amy shook her head sadly. "Coalition Command is ordering all ships to fall back to the inner rim. They're abandoning the outer colonies." Jake walked to the main viewing screen and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Zephyrian fleet was moving closer to everything he cared about. His home planet, his family, millions of innocent people who had never hurt anyone. The Liberty's Edge was just one small ship with a crew of 38. People. What could they possibly do against an empire that had conquered half the galaxy? The Zephyrians had destroyed civilizations thousands of years older than humanity. They had weapons that could crack planets and shields that had never been broken. But as Jake looked at his crew, he saw something that gave him hope. He saw determination in their eyes. He saw people who would not give up, no matter how bad things looked. Humans had always been fighters. They had always found a way to survive when everyone said it was impossible. "Amy," Jake said, "send a message to Coalition Command. Tell them the Liberty's Edge is staying on patrol. We're not running." "Away." Amy looked surprised. "Sir, our orders are to retreat to the inner rim. Command expects all ships to fall back." "I know what our orders are," Jake replied. "But I also know that people are going to die if someone doesn't try to help them. We may not be able to stop the Zephyrians, but we can try to buy some time for the evacuation fleets." Pete Rodriguez grinned for the first time all day. "Captain, if we're going to fight these aliens, we're going to need better weapons. Our plasma cannons and photon torpedoes won't even scratch their hulls. What do you suggest?" Jake asked. "Give me some time to think about it," Pete said. "There has to be a way to hurt them. Every ship has weak points, even Zephyrian ones." Dr. Lisa Parker entered the bridge from her laboratory. She was the ship's science officer and one of the smartest people Jake had ever met. Lisa could understand alien technology better than most people understood their own computers. "Captain," Lisa said, "I've been studying the sensor data from the battles with the Zephyrians. I think I might have found something interesting." "What is it?" Jake asked. "The Zephyrians use quantum physics for everything. Their shields, their weapons, their engines, it's all based on manipulating reality at the smallest possible level. That makes them incredibly powerful, but it might also be their weakness." Jake raised an eyebrow. "How so?" "Quantum systems are very delicate," Lisa explained. "They require perfect conditions to work properly. If something disrupts their quantum fields, their entire technology could fail." Navigator Susan Wells plotted a new course on her computer. "Captain, if we're really going to do this, I suggest we head for the Kepler system. There's a research station there with 50,000 civilians. The Zephyrians will probably attack it next." Jake nodded. "Set course for Kepler. Maximum speed." As the Liberty's Edge turned toward its destination, Jake felt a mixture of fear and excitement. They were about to face an enemy that had never been defeated. The odds were impossible, and they would probably all die trying. But that was what humans did. When faced with impossible odds, they didn't give up. They found a way to fight back, even when fighting seemed hopeless. Jake looked around at his crew and smiled. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The Zephyrian Empire thought they were unstoppable. They had conquered dozens of worlds and destroyed countless fleets. But they had never fought humans before. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon was not any technology or ship design. It was the simple refusal to surrender. Dr. Lisa Parker had not slept for 3 days. She spent all her time in the small laboratory aboard the Liberty's Edge, studying everything she could find about the Zephyrian Empire. Her desk was covered with computer tablets, holographic displays, and cups of cold coffee that she had forgotten to drink. Lisa was tired, but she was also excited. She had found something that no one else had noticed. The other scientists in the galaxy were all trying to build better weapons and stronger shields to fight the Zephyrians. But Lisa thought they were making a big mistake. Captain Jake Morrison entered the laboratory and looked around at the mess. Charts and diagrams covered every wall. Computer screens showed complex equations that hurt his eyes to look at. Lisa stood in the middle of it all, her hair messy and her clothes wrinkled, but her eyes were bright with discovery. "Lisa," Jake sighed, "Amy told me you wanted to see me. She said it was important." "Captain, I think I've found the answer," Lisa said quickly. "I know how to beat the Zephyrians. Jake felt his heart beat faster. Tell me. Lisa picked up a computer tablet and showed him a diagram. It looked like a spider web made of light, with different colored lines connecting dots all over the screen. This is how Zephyrian technology works, she explained. Everything they build is connected to quantum fields. Their weapons, their shields, their engines. It's all one big system. That's why they're so powerful. But it's also why they can be defeated. Jake studied the diagram, but he didn't understand what he was looking at. I'm not a scientist, Lisa. Can you explain it in simple words? Lisa smiled and pointed to the center of the web pattern. Think of it like this, Captain. The Zephyrians have built their entire civilization on top of a house of cards. The cards are very fancy and complicated, but they're still just cards. If you knock down the right card, the whole house falls apart. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Bell entered the laboratory. He was the ship's weapons officer, and he looked interested in what Lisa was saying. Ryan was a good soldier who understood weapons better than anyone else on the ship. Dr. Parker, Ryan said, are you talking about some kind of quantum torpedo? A weapon that can disrupt their fields? Lisa shook her head. No, nothing like that. That's what everyone else is trying to do, and it doesn't work. The Zephyrians are too good at quantum manipulation. If we try to fight them with quantum weapons, they'll always win. She walked over to another computer screen and pulled up a video recording from one of the recent battles. The screen showed Zephyrian ships firing their gravity weapons at Coalition vessels. The human ships exploded instantly, their hulls torn apart by forces that could bend space itself. Look at this, Lisa said. The Coalition ships are firing plasma cannons, photon torpedoes, and fusion bombs. All of those weapons are based on energy manipulation. They're fighting the Zephyrians on the Zephyrians' terms. Jake was beginning to understand. So we need to fight them on our terms instead. Exactly, Lisa said. The Zephyrians have built their defenses to handle energy weapons. Their shields can phase shift around plasma bolts, deflect particle beams, and absorb nuclear explosions. But they've never had to deal with anything simpler. Ryan looked confused. Simpler? What's simpler than a nuclear weapon? Lisa grinned and picked up a small metal ball from her desk. It was just a steel bearing, the kind used in machinery. She held it up so both men could see it. This, she said, Jake, and Ryan stared at the little ball. I don't understand, Jake. Sighed. Pure kinetic energy, Lisa explained. A chunk of metal moving very, very fast. No energy signature, no quantum fields, no exotic particles. Just simple physics. Mass times velocity equals force. She walked over to her main computer and pulled up another diagram. This one showed the internal structure of a Zephyrian ship, with all its quantum field generators highlighted in red. The Zephyrians' shields are designed to detect and deflect energy weapons, Lisa continued. Their sensors are so advanced that they can track individual photons and predict where plasma bolts will hit. But they can't track something that has no energy signature at all. Ryan's eyes lit up. You're talking about kinetic weapons. Rail guns, exactly. Magnetic acceleration cannons that fire solid projectiles at very high speeds. The Zephyrians. Shields won't even see them coming because there's nothing to detect. It's like trying to use a computer to track a thrown rock. Jake felt excitement building in his chest. How fast would these projectiles need to move? Lisa did some quick calculations on her computer. At least 10% of light speed to penetrate their hulls. 15% would be better. The key is to hit their quantum field generators. Without those, their entire technology stops working. Chief Engineer Pete Rodriguez entered the laboratory, carrying a toolkit and looking curious. He had heard voices and wanted to know what was happening. Pete, Jake said, How hard would it be to build magnetic acceleration cannons on this ship? Pete scratched his head and thought about it. Railguns? That's old technology, Captain. We used them on Earth about 50 years ago, before we developed plasma weapons. They're not too complicated to build, but they use a lot of power. Could you do it? Jake asked. Pete looked around the laboratory, studying the diagrams on Lisa's screens. Give me a week and I think I can convert our main cargo bay into a railgun system. Maybe the shuttle bay too. We'd have to use most of our power reserves, but it could work. Lisa pulled up more technical specifications on her computer. The projectiles should be made of tungsten or depleted uranium, something dense and hard. We need them to punch through the Zephyrians' hulls and reach their critical systems. Ryan was already thinking about tactics. How many shots would we get? Not many, Pete admitted. Railguns use enormous amounts of energy. Maybe 6 or 8 shots before we drain our main power cells. We'd have to make each shot count. Jake walked over to the viewing window and looked out at the stars. The Kepler system was still 2 days away at maximum speed. That would give Pete time to build his weapons, and Lisa time to figure out exactly where to aim them. There's something else, Lisa said quietly. If this works, if we actually manage to defeat a Zephyrian ship, we need to make sure the galaxy knows about it. Every species in the coalition needs to learn how to build kinetic weapons. Jake nodded. One battle won't win the war. But if we can show everyone else how to fight back, maybe we can turn the tide. Pete was already making plans in his head. I'll need to strip out all the non-essential systems to make room for the railgun components. Environmental control, recreational facilities, half the crew quarters. Everything that's not absolutely necessary for basic ship operations. Do it, Jake said. Whatever you need. Lisa saved her research files and started organizing her data. I'll work on targeting solutions. The Zephyrians' quantum field generators are heavily protected, but they have to be accessible for maintenance. If we can hit them in the right spot, we can cause cascade failures throughout their entire system. As his crew began working on their impossible plan, Jake felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. The Zephyrian Empire seemed unstoppable because they had never faced an enemy that fought with such simple, brutal tactics. They were expecting sophisticated energy weapons and complex quantum defenses. Instead, they were going to get chunks of metal flying at them faster than most ships could travel. Sometimes the oldest solutions were the best solutions. Sometimes the best way to solve a complicated problem was to ignore the complications entirely. The Liberty's Edge was about to teach the galaxy that human ingenuity was more powerful than any alien technology. Chief Engineer Pete Rodriguez had turned the Liberty's Edge into a ship that even its builders would not recognize. For 6 days, he and his engineering team had worked without stopping. They had torn out walls, ripped up floor panels, and completely redesigned the ship's interior. The dining hall was gone. The recreation room was gone. Half the crew quarters were gone. In their place were weapons that had not been used in space combat for 50 years. Pete stood in what used to be the ship's main dining area and admired his work. A massive railgun now occupied the entire space, its magnetic acceleration coils stretching from floor to ceiling. The weapon was ugly and brutal looking, nothing like the sleek plasma cannons that most modern ships carried. But Pete thought it was beautiful. Captain, Pete called over his communicator. You need to see this. Captain Jake Morrison made his way through the ship's narrow corridors. The Liberty's Edge felt different now. The walls hummed with electricity, and the air smelled of hot metal and ozone. Jake could feel the power flowing through the ships. Systems, all of it focused on the new weapons that Pete had built. When Jake reached the former dining hall, he stopped and stared. The railgun was enormous, easily twice the size of their old plasma cannon. Thick copper cables ran along the walls, carrying power from the ship's main reactor. The weapon's firing chamber was wide enough for a person to crawl through. How big are the projectiles? Jake asked. Pete picked up a tungsten slug from a nearby rack. It was about the size of a baseball, but much heavier. The metal was dark gray and felt cold to the touch. Each one weighs about 50 pounds, Pete explained. When we fire it, the magnetic fields will accelerate it to 15% of light speed. At that velocity, it will hit with the force of a small nuclear bomb. Ensign Bobby Chun emerged from the cargo bay, his clothes covered in metal shavings. Bobby was young and eager, and he had been working with Pete's team to manufacture ammunition for the railguns. His hands were cut and burned from handling the raw tungsten, but he was smiling. "Captain," Bobby said, "we've got 200 slugs. Ready to go. The fabrication units are making more as fast as they can." Jake picked up one of the tungsten projectiles and felt its weight. It was hard to believe that something so simple could be more effective than the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. But Dr. Lisa Parker's calculations were clear. These chunks of metal would punch through Zephyrian shields like they were made of paper. What about the other railguns? Jake asked. Pete led him through the ship to the converted cargo bays. 2 more railguns had been installed there, smaller than the main weapon, but still impressive. The ship's shuttle bay had been turned into a launching system for kinetic pods, small missiles that carried no explosives, just solid metal cores designed to penetrate enemy hulls. The secondary guns can fire every 30 seconds, Pete explained. The main gun needs 2 minutes to recharge between shots. And the kinetic pods ... Well, we can launch those as fast as we can load them. Navigator Susan Wells called out from the bridge. "Captain, we're approaching the Kepler system. Long-range sensors are picking up the Zephyrian fleet." Jake hurried back to the bridge, followed by Pete and Bobby. The main viewing screen showed the distant shapes of alien warships. Even at this distance, Jake could see that they were massive. Each Zephyrian dreadnought was the size of a small city, bristling with weapons and surrounded by smaller escort vessels. Lieutenant Amy Carter was monitoring the enemy communications. "Sir, I'm detecting at least 30 major warships. There, holding position around the 4th planet. The research station is still sending distress signals." Jake studied the tactical display. Red dots marked the positions of the Zephyrian ships. They were arranged in a perfect formation, confident and unafraid. Why shouldn't they be confident? No one had ever hurt them before. "Amy, try to contact the research station," Jake ordered. "Let them know help is coming." Dr. Lisa Parker entered, the bridge carrying her computer tablet. She had been working on targeting solutions for the past 3 days, analyzing every detail of Zephyrian ship design that she could find. "Captain," Lisa said, "I've identified the optimal target points. Each Zephyrian dreadnought has 6 quantum field generators. They're located here, here, and here." She pointed to different spots on a ship diagram. "If we can destroy 3 of them, the ship's entire system will collapse." Lieutenant Commander Ryan Bell checked his weapon systems. "All rail guns are charged and ready. Kinetic pods are loaded. We have firing solutions for the Lid dreadnought." Jake looked around at his crew. They were scared. He could see it in their eyes. But they were also determined. Everyone on the ship understood what they were about to attempt. They were going to attack an enemy that had conquered half the galaxy, using weapons that most people considered primitive and outdated. "All hands, this is the captain," Jake announced over the ship's communication system. "In 5 minutes, we're going to drop out of hyperspace, right in the middle of the Zephyrian fleet. I know this seems crazy. I know the odds are against us. But we have something the Zephyrians don't expect, the element of surprise." He paused and looked at the tactical display again. These aliens think they're invincible because they've never lost a battle. They think their technology makes them untouchable. Today, we're going to show them that sometimes the simplest solution is the best solution. Pete Rodriguez grinned from his position at the engineering station. Captain, all systems are ready. The railguns are charged to maximum power. We're going to hit them with everything we've got. Susan Wells began the final approach sequence, dropping out of hyperspace in 60 seconds. All crew, prepare for combat. Jake felt his heart pounding as the countdown continued. The Liberty's Edge was about to face 30 enemy ships, each one capable of destroying planets. They had 6 railguns, 200 tungsten slugs, and a crew of 38 people who refused to give up. It should have been suicide. Against any normal enemy, it would have been suicide. But the Zephyrians were not prepared for kinetic weapons. Their shields were designed to stop energy bolts and plasma streams, not chunks of metal moving at incredible speeds. 10 seconds to normal space, Susan announced. Jake gripped the arms of his command chair. All weapons, prepare to fire on my command. The Liberty's Edge dropped out of hyperspace directly in front of the lead Zephyrian dreadnought. The alien ship was enormous, its dark hull seeming to bend light around it. Energy fields crackled along its surface as its weapons began to charge. Fire, Jake commanded. The ship bucked as all 6 railguns discharged at once. Tungsten slugs streaked across space faster than the eye could follow. The Zephyrians' shields flickered and tried to deflect the incoming projectiles, but there was nothing to deflect. The shields were designed to stop energy, not matter. The first slug punched through the alien ship's hull like it was made of tissue. Paper. The second and third slugs followed, striking the quantum field generators that Lisa had identified. Explosions bloomed along the dreadnought's surface as its carefully balanced systems began to fail. Direct hits, Ryan shouted. Their shields are down. I'm reading massive system failures. The massive Zephyrian ship began to list to one side, its quantum drive sputtering as the field generators went offline. Other ships in the fleet were turning toward the Liberty's Edge, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. Evasive maneuvers, Jake ordered. Continue firing. The small human ship darted between the alien vessels like a fighter dodging between giants. Its railguns fired again and again, each shot carefully aimed at the weak points that Lisa had identified. One by one, the Zephyrian ships began to fail as their quantum systems collapsed under the assault of pure kinetic energy. It was working. The impossible plan was actually working. The Liberty's Edge flew through space like a dart thrown between giants. Around them, Zephyrian dreadnoughts turned their massive hulls to track the small human ship. Each alien vessel was 50 times larger than Jake's ship, armed with weapons that could crack moons and protected by shields that had never been broken. Captain Jake Morrison gripped his command chair as the ship shook from a near miss. A Zephyrian gravity beam had passed close enough to warp the metal walls around them. If that shot had been just a few meters closer, the Liberty's Edge would have been crushed like an empty can. Second dreadnought is turning to face us, reported Lieutenant Commander Ryan Bell from his weapons station. They're charging their main cannon. Jake could see the alien ship on the main screen. Its hull was covered in strange symbols that seemed to move and shift as he watched. Energy gathered at the front of the vessel, building up to a discharge that would vaporize anything in its path. Fire all railguns at that ship, Jake ordered. Target their quantum generators. The Liberty's Edge bucked as its weapons fired. Tungsten slugs shot across the space between the ships in less than a second. The Zephyrian tried to activate its phase shift shields, but the metal projectiles passed right through the quantum barriers, as if they weren't there. 3 slugs struck the alien vessel's hull. The first one punched a hole clean through the ship's armor. The second hit a quantum field generator, and caused a cascade of explosions along the ship's spine. The third struck the main power conduit and shut down half the vessel's systems. "Target destroyed," Ryan shouted. "That dreadnought is dead in space." But there were still 28 more enemy ships, and they were all turning their weapons toward the Liberty's edge. Jake watched the tactical display as red targeting indicators locked onto his ship from every direction. "Amy, get me a channel." "To the research station," Jake ordered. Lieutenant Amy Carter's fingers flew over her communication controls. "Channel open, sir." "Research station, Kepler. This is Captain Morrison of the Liberty's Edge. Begin immediate evacuation. Get everyone off that planet now." A scared voice crackled through the speakers. "Captain Morrison, this is Station Commander Williams. We have 50,000 people here. Our evacuation ships can't carry everyone. Load as many as you can and get them away from here," Jake replied. "We'll buy you as much time as possible." Navigator Susan Wells called out from her station. "Captain, 3 more dreadnoughts are moving to surround us. We're going to be caught in a crossfire." Jake studied the tactical display. "The Zephyrians. We're trying to box them in, to force the Liberty's Edge into a position where it couldn't dodge their attacks." It was a smart strategy, and it would probably work, but Jake had an idea. "Pete, how much power do we have left in the main reactor?" Jake asked over the intercom. Chief Engineer Pete Rodriguez's voice came back immediately. "About 60%, Captain. The railguns are using power faster than we can generate it." "What if we overload the reactor? Push it past its safety limits?" There was a pause before Pete answered. "We could get maybe 20% more power, but only for a few minutes. After that, we'd have to shut down everything except life support." Jake made his decision. "Do it. Give me everything you've got." The ship's lights flickered as Pete pushed the reactor beyond its normal operating parameters. The railguns began charging faster, and the targeting computers ran their calculations with increased speed. Dr. Lisa Parker was at her science station, monitoring the enemy ships. "Captain, I'm detecting something interesting. When we destroy their quantum generators, it's causing feedback through their entire fleet network. The Zephyrians link all their ships together through quantum fields. If we hit them in the right sequence, we might be able to cause a chain reaction." "What kind of chain reaction?" Jake asked. "System failures spreading from ship to ship, like a computer virus, but made of pure physics." Ryan Bell had been listening to the conversation. "Which ships do we need to hit?" Lisa pointed to several red dots on the tactical display. "These 3 vessels are the network hubs. If we can destroy their quantum generators simultaneously, the feedback will spread to every other ship in the fleet." Jake looked at the positions of the target ships. They were spread out across the formation, and each one was heavily defended. The Liberty's Edge would have to fly through a storm of enemy fire to reach all 3 targets. "Susan, plot a course." "That takes us past all 3 hub ships," Jake ordered. "Maximum speed." "Sir, that course will take us right through the center of their formation. Every ship in the fleet will be shooting at us." "I know," Jake said grimly, "but it's our only chance." The Liberty's Edge accelerated toward the first target, dodging gravity beams and plasma bolts that filled the space around them. The ship's hull rang like a bell as debris from near misses struck the outer plating. Ensign Bobby Chun was in the HFY cargo bay, loading tungsten slugs into the railgun magazines as fast as he could. His hands were burned from handling the hot metal, but he didn't stop working. Every slug he loaded was another chance to hurt the enemy. "First target in range," Ryan announced. "Firing." 2 railguns discharged simultaneously. The tungsten slugs struck the Zephyrian hub ship's quantum generators and caused a brilliant explosion that lit up the darkness of space. Immediately, the alien vessel began to list as its systems failed. Good hit, Lisa shouted. I'm detecting quantum field disruptions. Spreading to the nearby ships. The Liberty's Edge banked hard to the left, racing toward the second target. Zephyrian ships fired everything they had at the small human vessel. Energy beams crisscrossed the space around them like a deadly web. One gravity beam passed so close that it tore a section of armor from the ship's hull. Another blast knocked out their secondary shield generator. The Liberty's Edge was taking damage, but it was still flying. Second target in range, Ryan called out. Fire! More railguns discharged. The tungsten slugs crossed the distance to the second hub ship and struck its quantum field generators. Another explosion, another failing alien vessel. The quantum disruption spread further through the Zephyrian fleet. One more to go, Jake said. Can we make it? Pete's voice came over the intercom, strained with effort. Reactor is at 115%. We've got maybe 2 minutes before we have to shut down. The third target was the largest. Ship in the fleet, a massive command vessel that bristled with weapons. As the Liberty's Edge approached, the alien ship fired everything it had. The space around them became a solid wall of energy. Susan Wells threw the ship into a wild spiral, trying to dodge the incoming fire. I can't avoid all of it, Captain. There's too much. A plasma beam struck their starboard engine, causing explosions. Throughout the rear section of the ship, warning lights flashed on every console as systems failed one after another. Hull breach on Deck 3, someone shouted. Engine 2 is offline, called another voice. We're losing life support in the aft sections. But they were close enough now. The third hub ship filled the main screen, its dark hull covered in weapon ports that were all firing at once. All remaining rail guns, Jake ordered. Everything we have. Fire. The Liberty's Edge discharged every weapon it had left. 6 tungsten. Slugs streaked toward the enemy command ship. 5 of them struck home, punching through the alien vessel's hull and destroying its quantum field generators. The explosion was enormous. The command ship's quantum systems failed catastrophically, sending waves of disruption through the quantum field network that connected the entire fleet. One by one, the other Zephyrian ships began to shut down as their systems crashed. It's working, Lisa shouted. The chain reaction is spreading through their entire fleet. They're losing power. Jake watched the tactical display as red enemy indicators began turning yellow and gray. A mighty Zephyrian fleet that had terrorized the galaxy for 5 years was floating dead in space, their incredible technology defeated by chunks of metal fired from magnetic cannons. Amy, contact the research station, Jake said. Tell them the immediate threat is over. As the Liberty's Edge drifted among the wreckage of the alien fleet, Jake felt something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. They had done the impossible. They had defeated the Zephyrians using nothing but human ingenuity and the refusal to give up. But this was just the beginning. The word would spread now. Every species in the galaxy would learn how to build kinetic weapons. The Zephyrian empires. Days of easy conquest were over. Sometimes the simplest solutions were the best solutions. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty's Edge and looked out at the battlefield, where 30 Zephyrian dreadnoughts had once dominated space with their terrible power. Now only dark hulks drifted silently among the stars. The alien ships were not destroyed, but they were dead. Their quantum systems had failed completely, leaving them helpless and powerless. Lieutenant Amy Carter was busy at her communication station, listening to radio signals that were coming in from across the galaxy. Her face showed excitement and disbelief as she processed the information flooding through the channels. Captain, Amy said, her voice filled with wonder, you need to hear this. Ships all across the sector are reporting successful attacks against Zephyrian forces. They're using kinetic weapons, just like we did. Jake felt his heart beat faster. How many ships? Dozens, sir. Maybe hundreds. The Rexarian Defense Corps just destroyed an entire Zephyrian patrol squadron using improvised mass drivers. The Altarian survivors have retrofitted their remaining ships with magnetic acceleration cannons. Even the peaceful Deltan merchants are mounting railguns on their cargo vessels. Dr. Lisa Parker looked up from her science station, where she had been monitoring quantum field readings from the disabled Zephyrian ships. Captain, this is incredible. The word is spreading faster than hyperspace communication. Every species in the galaxy is learning how to build kinetic weapons. Navigator Susan Wells was tracking fleet movements on her tactical display. Sir, I'm reading massive changes in ship positions across 3 sectors. Coalition forces that were retreating are now advancing. The Zephyrian Empire's entire front line is collapsing. Jake walked over to the main viewing screen and stared out at the stars. In the distance, he could see the lights of evacuation ships leaving the research station. 50,000 people were safe because his crew had been willing to fight an impossible battle. But more importantly, the entire galaxy now knew that the Zephyrians could be defeated. Chief Engineer Pete Rodriguez climbed up from the engine room, his face tired but happy. His clothes were still dirty from working on the railguns, and his hands were burned from handling the hot metal slugs. But he was smiling wider than Jake had ever seen. Captain, Pete said, I just got a communication from Earth Command. They want complete technical specifications for our railgun modifications. Every shipyard in human space is being converted to kinetic weapon production. How long before they have new ships ready? Jake asked. The message said they're working. Around the clock. First batch of kinetic frigates should be ready in 2 weeks. After that, they plan to build 100 ships every month. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Bell was studying the sensor readings from the battlefield. Captain, I'm detecting something interesting about the Zephyrian ships. They're not completely dead. Their life support systems are still working. And I'm picking up alien life signs. Jake raised an eyebrow. Survivors? Looks like it. The quantum system failures knocked out their weapons and engines, but the crew compartments are still habitable. Dr. Lisa Parker's eyes lit up with scientific curiosity. Captain, this could be our chance to learn about their technology. If we could study their ships, maybe even talk to their crew, we might understand how their empire really works. Jake thought about it for a moment. The Zephyrians had conquered dozens of worlds and killed billions of people. But they were also defeated now, helpless and stranded in space. What humanity did next would show the galaxy what kind of species they really were. Amy, try to establish communication with the Zephyrian command ship, Jake ordered. Use Universal Translation Protocols. Amy worked at her station for several minutes, sending signals across multiple frequencies. Finally, her face showed surprise as she received a response. Captain, I'm getting a reply. It's a surrender offer. Jake felt shock run through him. The mighty Zephyrian Empire, which had never lost a battle, was offering to surrender to a single human ship. Put it on speakers, Jake said. A strange musical voice filled the bridge. The universal translator turned the alien words into English, but the tone was unmistakable. It was the voice of someone who had been completely defeated. Human vessel, this is Fleet Commander Zereth of the Zephyrian Empire. Our ships are disabled, and our weapons are useless. We ... We do not understand how you have done this thing. Our technology is superior to yours in every way, yet you have defeated us with primitive weapons that should not be able to penetrate our defenses. Jake took a deep breath before responding. Fleet Commander Zereth, this is Captain Morrison. Of the Liberty's Edge, your empire has conquered many worlds and killed many innocent people, but we are not like you. We don't destroy our enemies when they are helpless. There was a long pause before the alien replied. What do you want from? You? Information? Jake said. We want to know about your empire. How many worlds have you conquered? How many more fleets do you have? And most importantly, are you willing to stop the killing? Another pause. Captain Morrison, the Zephyrian Empire spans 2,000 star systems. We have conquered 47 different species over the past 3 centuries. Our remaining fleets number in the hundreds. We have always believed that superior technology gave us the right to rule over inferior species. Jake looked around at his crew. They were all listening to every word, understanding that this conversation would shape the future of the galaxy. Technology doesn't give anyone the right to rule over others, Jake replied. Every species has the right to live free. Your empire's days of conquest are over. How can you be so certain? The alien asked. You have destroyed 1 fleet, but we have many more. Dr. Lisa Parker stepped forward. Captain, may I speak to them? Jake nodded. Go ahead, Lisa. Fleet Commander Zereth, this is Dr. Parker. I'm the one who discovered how to defeat your quantum technology. What you need to understand is that your defeat here wasn't lucky. It was inevitable. Your entire empire is built on the assumption that all advanced species will fight using energy weapons and quantum defenses. That assumption has always been correct, the alien replied. Not anymore, Lisa said. By tomorrow, every species in the galaxy will know how to build kinetic weapons. Your quantum shields are useless against simple metal projectiles. Your incredibly advanced technology has become your greatest weakness. The silence that followed lasted for almost a minute. When the Zephyrian finally spoke again, his voice was different. Smaller, defeated. Dr. Parker, are you saying that our empire will fall? Your empire has already fallen, Lisa replied gently. You just don't know it yet. Amy's communication board lit up with incoming signals. Captain, I'm receiving transmissions from Coalition Command. They're reporting Zephyrian retreats across the entire front line. The aliens are pulling back to their home systems. Jake felt a wave of satisfaction wash over him. The impossible had happened. An empire that had seemed unstoppable was retreating because one small ship had been willing to try something different. Fleet Commander Zereth, Jake said, you have a choice to make. You can continue fighting a war you cannot win, or you can help us find a peaceful solution. The galaxy is big enough for all of us, but only if we can learn to live together. And if we choose to keep fighting, the alien asked, then you will lose, Jake said simply. Not because we are stronger than you, but because we showed everyone else that you can be beaten. United, the free species of the galaxy are more powerful than your empire ever was. Over the following hours, as rescue ships arrived to help with the evacuation of the research station, Jake watched the reports coming in from across the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire was indeed falling apart. Their fleets were retreating, their conquered worlds were rebelling, and their 1,000-year reign of terror was coming to an end. All because a small human ship had refused to run away when running. Away was the sensible thing to do. All because humanity's greatest strength had always been the willingness to try impossible things and the creativity to find simple solutions to complex problems. The Liberty's Edge had entered the fight when everyone said the fight could not be won. And in doing so, they had changed the course of galactic history forever.